want you to take a breath and listen to me closely. Everything you've been taught about history, the neat timelines, the simple progression from primitive to modern, it's mostly wrong. We believe we know the story. Fire, then pyramids, then the Roman Empire, and then us, right? But what if I told you that scattered across our planet are objects that scientists, historians, and linguists simply cannot explain? These aren't just curiosities. These are artifacts that actively defy our established timeline. They are proof that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge we're only just rediscovering, or that contact occurred between cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going on an archaeological thrill ride. We're diving deep into the mysteries. We're going to look at the crystal skull, a carving so precise it should have been impossible to create with ancient tools. We'll examine the Voynich Manuscript, a beautiful book written in a language no human alive can read. We'll explore the self-healing power of Roman cement, a technology that makes our modern building materials look like sandcastles. And we'll analyze the Fuente Magna bowl, an object that forces us to question if ancient people traveled across continents. These are the broken puzzle pieces of history. They tell a story of lost genius, forgotten science, and unbelievable global connections. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew. This is the history they didn't want you to find. Let's kick off our journey with an object that embodies the term archaeological paradox, the crystal skulls. Specifically, we're talking about the famous and highly controversial Mitchell Hedges skull. In 1924, deep in the ruins of a Mayan city in Belize, an expedition led by F.A. Mitchell Hedges claimed they found something breathtaking. A life-sized, anatomically perfect human skull carved from a single solid block of rock crystal, or quartz. It was claimed to be thousands of years old, a relic of an ancient, powerful civilization. Now, the Mayans were incredible artists and astronomers. But the moment this skull was put under scientific scrutiny, the story unravels. And that's where the true mystery begins. The problem with this skull isn't what it is, but how it was made. Quartz crystal has a hardness of 7 on the Mohs scale. That's hard enough to scratch glass. If the Mayans wanted to carve this skull, they would have used ancient technology. Sanding with sand, maybe water, and stone tools. Gemologists who have studied the skull estimate that using those primitive methods, it would have taken hundreds of years, continuously, without stopping, just to achieve the polish and smoothness we see. But here's the biggest puzzle, the part that truly defies logic. When you study the crystal's structure, you see that the skull was carved against the natural axis of the quartz. If you tried to do that with basic abrasive tools, the stone should have shattered or chipped almost immediately. It requires a level of precision, stability, and patience that modern machinists struggle with, let alone ancient Mesoamerican craftsmen. So, what are the two options? Option A. It's a genuine ancient artifact, meaning the Mayans possessed a method of crystal carving, maybe acoustic resonance or some lost technology, that we simply cannot explain. Option B. It's a complete hoax, carved in Europe in the 19th century and planted. Either way, the existence of the Mitchell Hedges skull forces a reevaluation. If it's truly ancient, history is wrong about technology. If it's a forgery, it's one of the most brilliant, time-consuming, and misleading scams ever executed. It's a paradox in crystalline form. Next, we move from impossible stone to an impossible book. Imagine holding a text so profoundly secret, so utterly unique, that it has resisted every attempt at translation for over 6 centuries. This is the Voynich Manuscript. This manuscript, a 240-page parchment volume, resides in Yale University's Bainecki Library. It gets its name from Wilfrid Voynich, the Polish book dealer who rediscovered it in Italy in 1912. The parchment dates back to the early 15th century. On the surface, it looks like a medieval encyclopedia. It's filled with elaborate illustrations, tiny, nude women bathing in strange pools, complex astrological diagrams, and highly detailed drawings of plants that botanists simply cannot identify on Earth. But the real riddle is the text. The script, known as Voynichese, is an elegant, flowing sequence of characters unlike Latin, Greek, or any known language. Every major codebreaker in history has failed to crack it. World War I cryptographers, modern AI algorithms, linguistic experts, all defeated. Why is it so difficult? It's not written in a simple substitution cipher. The key problem is linguistic consistency. The text follows statistical rules found in human languages. Certain words appear frequently, and the entropy, the complexity and randomness, is comparable to natural languages, suggesting it's a genuine communication system, not just random squiggles. So, if it's a language, what language is it? The theories are wild. Is it a lost dialect invented by a forgotten tribe? Is it a complex code designed to hide alchemical or medicinal secrets? Could it be the first successful instance of an author creating a complete, functional, imaginary language centuries before J.R.R. Tolkien? Or is it the most elaborate, time-consuming hoax in history, designed to look exactly like a real language to fool the brightest minds? The Voynich manuscript challenges our faith in our own ability to decipher the past. It's a beautifully illustrated story, a historical treasure, written in an alphabet we can see, but whose meaning remains trapped behind an unbreakable veil. It is the greatest literary mystery that refuses to be solved. Our third artifact takes us to the Bronze Age, specifically to the island of Crete, home of the mysterious Minoan civilization. We are looking at the Phaistos disk. Unearthed in 1908 in the ruins of the Minoan palace of Phaistos, this object is deceptively simple. A flat, circular disk of fired clay, about 6 inches in diameter, dating back to roughly 1700 BC. Both sides of the disk are covered in a spiral of unique hieroglyphic symbols. There are 45 distinct types of symbols, totaling 241 individual impressions. It looks like a prayer, a poem, or maybe even a piece of an ancient board game. But the true scientific defiance lies in how the text was applied. When you look closely at the symbols, you realize they weren't carved into the clay by hand. Each symbol was individually pressed into the soft clay using a set of custom-made stamps or seals. Now let's pause there, because this is a massive historical anomaly. Using standardized, reusable stamps to reproduce text is the fundamental principle of movable type printing. This disk, dating to 1700 BC, means the Minoans had grasped the concept of mass text production. Think about that. The Phaistos disk predates Johannes Gutenberg's printing press by nearly 3,000 years. It is, by definition, the earliest known example of a typed, standardized document. It suggests an isolated, astonishing technological leap in communications that was completely forgotten after the Minoan collapse. The second puzzle is, of course, the language. Despite decades of effort, the script remains completely undeciphered. We have no other examples of this specific script. Was this printing technique widely used, or was this disk a unique experiment? We have the tool, but we don't have the translation. The Phaistos disk is a ghost from the past. It proves that one of the most transformative technologies in human history, printing, was invented, used, and then lost for millennia, forcing us to completely rethink the narrative of human technological progress. We now turn to an artifact that straddles the line between deep archaeology and science fiction. We're heading to the remote mountainous borderlands of China and Tibet to discuss the Dropa stones. This story begins in 1938, when a Chinese archaeologist named Chi Te allegedly led an expedition into the Bayan Karaula Mountains. Inside a series of remote caves, they found something truly bizarre. Hundreds of small skeletons, small, slender, with disproportionately large heads, and piled high nearby were hundreds of these stone discs. These aren't natural stones. Each disc, about a foot wide, had a tiny groove containing mysterious, microscopic hieroglyphic symbols that spiraled out from the center. Decades later, a Chinese professor named Tsum Nui supposedly managed to translate the discs. And the story they told was absolutely unbelievable. About 12,000 years ago, a spaceship belonging to a race called the Dropa crash-landed in the mountains. The Dropa people, the small skeletons found in the cave, were unable to repair their ship and were eventually hunted by local tribes. Now this is where we have to pause and apply skepticism. This entire incredible narrative, the translation, the professor, and the discovery itself, comes from highly questionable, often contradictory sources. The problem is that the stones themselves, or the original collection of hundreds, vanished. They were supposedly stored in museums but cannot be located today. We are left only with blurry photographs, sketches, and a handful of purported replicas. So why do we include the Dropa stones? Because whether they are real or a fabricated myth, they represent a fascinating case study in how OOPArts are born. They force us to ask, if an artifact exists that cannot be explained by our history, are we open to the most extreme possibilities, like ancient visitors, or do we default to simple hoax? The legend of the Dropa stones challenges our willingness to believe. They highlight the gap between official history and the compelling, yet unsupported stories that still echo from the most remote corners of the planet. We now arrive at perhaps the most famous and certainly the most intensely studied relic in human history, the Shroud of Turin. Housed in the royal chapel of the Turin Cathedral in Italy, this 14-foot-long piece of linen cloth has been revered by millions for centuries as the authentic burial cloth of Jesus Christ. It bears a faint, full-body image, front and back, of a man who appears to have suffered severe trauma consistent with crucifixion. For centuries, the image was difficult to see with the naked eye. It looked like a mere faint stain. But everything changed in 1898 when Italian photographer Secondo Pia was allowed to take the first photograph. When Pia developed the negative plate, he saw something breathtaking. The faint image on the cloth was actually a perfect negative image. His photograph, the negative of the negative, revealed a stunning, clear, and positive image of the man's face and body. The shroud itself acts like a piece of photographic film. The science surrounding the shroud is intensely contradictory. In 1988, 3 separate laboratories conducted carbon-14 dating tests on samples from the cloth. All 3 concluded the shroud dated from 1260 to 1390 AD, suggesting it was a clever medieval forgery. But the controversy doesn't end there. Subsequent research has only deepened the mystery. Scientists have noted that the image is incredibly shallow. Only the top layer of linen fibers is colored, and there is no evidence of paint, dyes, or brushstrokes. Furthermore, the image encodes 3-dimensional information. When modern technology translates the image data, it accurately produces a 3D model of the man's body, a feat impossible for any medieval painter to achieve. So we are left with a massive paradox. Science suggests it's a 700-year-old medieval textile. Yet the image creation defies our understanding of physics, chemistry, and art from that period. It remains an anomaly, a piece of linen cloth that challenges either our understanding of history or our current scientific capabilities. We now shift gears from mystery texts and impossible carvings to outright complex technology. Our 6th artifact is arguably the most significant archaeological find to ever rewrite the history of engineering, the Antikythera mechanism. This story begins in 1900, off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera. Sponge divers discovered an ancient Roman shipwreck dating back to about 60 BC. Among the statues and coins, they pulled up a corroded, calcified lump of bronze, looking like nothing more than a rusted clock. Decades of meticulous research, including X-rays and 3D imaging, revealed the truth. This lump was actually a highly sophisticated analog computer. It was a portable device used to predict astronomical positions, eclipses, and the precise dates of important events like the ancient Olympic Games. What makes this object defy history? Its complexity. Inside the device were 37 interlocking bronze gears, some incredibly tiny, featuring differential gearing and highly sophisticated manufacturing techniques. Historians originally believed that technology of this sophistication, this level of mechanical engineering, wasn't achieved until the invention of the great astronomical clocks in Europe during the 14th century, over 1,500 years later. This isn't just a calendar. It's a miniaturized, precision-engineered machine. The Greeks had built a computer roughly 2,000 years before electricity. The mechanism forces us to ask, was this an isolated genius invention, perhaps by a single brilliant mind like Archimedes? Or was this technology actually widespread, and we've simply lost the rest of the examples? This singular device proves that ancient Greek science reached a mechanical peak we never credited them with. The Antikythera mechanism is a stark reminder that technological progress isn't a straight line. Entire fields of engineering can blossom, reach amazing heights, and then simply vanish from the historical record. Our next artifact isn't a mysterious carving or a hidden device. It's a fundamental building material. But its properties defy everything we know about modern chemistry. We are talking about Roman cement. Think about the structures that have defined civilization. The Pantheon in Rome, standing perfectly intact for nearly 2,000 years. The massive aqueducts, and critically the Roman harbors, some of which are still standing and operational, submerged in the salty Mediterranean Sea. If you build a structure today using modern Portland cement, the standard concrete mix, in a marine environment, it will crack, crumble, and fail within about 50 years due to the corrosion caused by seawater. Modern concrete simply doesn't last in the ocean. So how did the Romans build piers and harbors that have survived 2 millennia of continuous saltwater bombardment? Scientists finally cracked the code, and the answer is astonishing. The Romans didn't use our modern limestone-based mix. They used a combination of volcanic ash, known as pozzolana, lime, and seawater. When this mixture interacts with the constant presence of seawater, it triggers a slow chemical reaction that actually creates a rare mineral called aluminum tobermarite. This mineral grows naturally within the cracks of the concrete, effectively making the Roman cement self-healing. As it encounters damage or stress, the contact with seawater triggers the growth of new crystal structures, making the material stronger and more resilient over time. This completely flips our understanding of material science. The Roman engineers weren't just lucky. They understood chemistry on a molecular level far surpassing their era. They created a material that is not only more durable, but also far more sustainable than our modern methods. The great paradox is that, in the 21st century, we are now scrambling to recreate a technology perfected by the Romans 2,000 years ago. We now jump continents and time periods for an artifact that, if authenticated, completely shatters our understanding of global exploration. We are traveling to the high plateau of Bolivia, near Lake Titicaca, for the Fuente Magna bowl. Discovered by accident in the 1950s, the Fuente Magna is a large ceramic bowl used for ceremonies. On the surface, it looks like a typical piece of local Andean pottery. But when researchers began cleaning it, they found something astonishing etched onto the rim and interior. The bowl features 2 very distinct types of script. One set of inscriptions is clearly local, using ancient Andean symbols, but the other set, carved intricately around the rim, bears an uncanny resemblance to a completely foreign, old-world script. Several linguistic researchers, including Dr. Clyde Winters, have examined the text and claimed that this foreign script is a form of Sumerian cuneiform, wedge-shaped writing, and Proto-Sumerian, a language from ancient Mesopotamia, or modern-day Iraq. Let that sink in. We have a ceremonial bowl found in the heart of the Andes Mountains, possibly carrying writing from a civilization that peaked in the Fertile Crescent, thousands of miles and an entire ocean away, potentially dating back over 4,000 years. This artifact, alongside others like the disputed Iberian scripts found in Mexico, raises the controversial possibility of transoceanic contact long before Columbus, Vikings, or even the earliest Chinese explorers. Was there a voyage from Mesopotamia that reached South America? Was the knowledge carried across the Pacific? Or is this just a remarkable coincidence, a case of pareidolia where we see patterns that aren't truly there? The Fuente Magna bowl is a powerful symbol of a radical idea, that ancient history was far more interconnected and globalized than our current textbooks admit. It challenges us to look beyond localized history and consider the breathtaking possibilities of ancient mariners. Our ninth object is proof that sometimes the biggest historical mysteries are hidden in the simplest forms. We're returning to the Roman world, but this time for an object that has entirely defeated archaeologists, the Roman Dodecahedra. Imagine a small hollow object, usually made of bronze, with 12 flat pentagonal faces. Each face has a circular hole of varying size, and small knobs stick out from the corners. Since the 18th century, over 100 of these dodecahedra have been found across what was once the Roman Empire, mostly in Gaul and Germany. These artifacts date from the 2nd to 4th centuries AD. We know they are Roman, and we know they were important because they appear to be standardized and well-crafted. But here is the central, baffling puzzle. We have no textual record of what they were used for. 0. The theories are endless and often absurd. Were they candle holders? Unlikely, as no wax residue has ever been found. Were they children's toys? Too well made and precise. Were they dice for a complex game? Maybe, but who would play a game requiring 12 sides with different-sized holes? The most common theories suggest a purpose related to geometry, surveying, or astronomy. Some archaeologists believe the dodecahedra were precision measuring instruments, perhaps used to calculate optimal sowing dates for grain or for military surveying to set up artillery fire based on light angles. The differing hole sizes would allow users to sight specific angles in a grid. However, none of these theories can be definitively proven, and no one has successfully replicated a practical, attested Roman use for the object. Why would the Romans, meticulous record keepers who detailed everything from plumbing to warfare, fail to mention this object, which clearly required significant effort to manufacture? The Roman dodecahedron is the perfect mystery box. It reminds us that vast chunks of ancient daily life, tools, rituals, games, can simply vanish from the collective memory, leaving behind a beautifully made object whose purpose we can only guess at. We have saved the most time-defying artifact for last. If the previous 9 items challenged human history, this final item challenges the entire history of life on Earth. We are talking about the Klerksdorp spheres. Our location is the High Veld of South Africa, near the mining town of Klerksdorp. For decades, miners have been digging into a mineral deposit called pyrophyllite, extracting small, metallic, or fibrous spheres, sometimes only an inch or 2 in diameter. What makes these spheres truly extraordinary is the rock they are found in. Geologists date the pyrophyllite deposits to the Precambrian era, making the rock approximately 3 billion years old. Now let's look at the spheres themselves. They are not merely round pebbles. They are perfectly formed ovoids, some with parallel grooves running around their equator, almost like the seam on a baseball. They are incredibly hard, often made of nickel-steel alloys or hematite, and some specimens are so perfectly balanced that they have been used in museums to measure seismic activity. The critical question is their origin. Mainstream geology argues they are natural concretions, naturally forming mineral formations that crystallize over immense time in a perfectly spherical shape. This is the orthodox explanation. However, proponents of the OOPArt theory point to the perfect symmetry and the distinct parallel grooves, arguing that they cannot be purely natural. They look undeniably manufactured, like small, precision-engineered bearings or artifacts. If these spheres were indeed manufactured, which would imply intelligence, design, and tool use, it means that advanced life existed on Earth 3 billion years ago, long before the accepted timeline for even simple multicellular organisms. The Klerksdorp spheres are the ultimate test of our chronological arrogance. Do we trust the evidence of complexity, or do we prioritize the established geological timeline? We've done it. We've journeyed across continents and millennia, examining 10 objects that stand as stubborn evidence against the accepted narrative of history. Take a moment to absorb what we've seen. The crystal skull and the Voynich manuscript showed us that ancient people had capacities in artistry and linguistics that we still can't replicate or decipher. The Antikythera mechanism and Roman cement prove that highly advanced, sophisticated technologies were invented, perfected, and then completely lost. The Phaistos disc hinted at a Minoan printing revolution 3,000 years early, while the Fuente Magna bowl suggest that Sumerians might have reached South America millennia before Columbus. And the Klerksdorp spheres, those 3 billion-year-old anomalies, challenge the very timeline of life on Earth itself. What is the unified message from these 10 paradoxes? I believe it boils down to 2 critical insights. Technology is cyclical, not linear. We assume progress is a smooth upward curve. But these artifacts demonstrate that technological innovation is sporadic and easily erased. Entire fields of knowledge, like the self-healing chemistry of Roman cement or the complex gear mechanisms of the Antikythera, can blossom, thrive, and then vanish during societal collapse, only to be rediscovered centuries later. This means there might be countless other lost golden ages we know nothing about. History is incomplete. Our history books are based on what survived, the texts that weren't burned, the buildings that didn't crumble, and the official records kept by the winners. These 10 artifacts are the remnants of the exceptions, the things that didn't fit. They are the broken puzzle pieces that refuse to click into the neat picture we've framed. They represent forgotten genius, forgotten journeys, and secrets that defy our attempts to categorize them. Your takeaway from this journey should be a renewed sense of constructive skepticism. The next time you look at a museum exhibit or read a historical textbook, remember the skull that couldn't be carved, the book that can't be read, and the spheres that shouldn't exist. History is not a closed book. It's an ongoing investigation, full of colossal, unexplained mysteries hidden in plain sight. It's our job, your job, to keep questioning, to keep looking for those broken pieces. Before you go, let me know in the comments, which of these 10 artifacts blew your mind the most? Let the debate begin.